Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Shahru Ramadan allazi unzila fihi al-Quran hudan lin-nas. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma, Rabbi zidna ilma. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan this year has officially begun today, and from today onwards, inshallah, we intend to start this new series. This new series. This is not really a scholarly work or scholarly effort. This is not even a research effort. What we intend to do, however, is to present the entire Quran from cover to cover. So I'll give some background to this initiative of what we thought of doing through this initiative. So this is basically a habit which I have been doing or practicing for some years now, for many years now, of reading the Quran. And this is not limited to just the month of Ramadan, but rather I have this habit of reading the Quran in Ramadan and outside of the month of Ramadan in other months as well. So what I thought from this month, from this Ramadan onwards, is to organize my efforts a little bit more so that it can be of help to you as well. So the primary purpose of this series is not to be a very in-depth and a scholarly discussion. Rather, what we intend to do is what would I normally be doing otherwise if this series were not there? Normally, I would be taking some time out on each day of this Ramadan and read the Quran by myself. So what I thought was, if I put in a bit more effort, a little extra effort, it can be of a great help to many of you. So I'm sure all of you do have, or most of you do have, the habit of reading the Quran. But we want to focus not just on reading the Arabic text, but also on the meanings to some extent at least. So the entire series would be as if I am reading the Quran, but not just reading for myself, but as I'm reading it, I'm trying to capture it in video format. So I'll be reading it and pausing in between now and then for a rapid and brief, both rapid and brief explanation of some of the verses of the Quran. So that is the entire project basically. That is the entire program basically. That's the entire series basically. So before beginning, actually, I have to give you some information about the series itself. Otherwise, it should not happen that you are at a loss at following the series and you don't know what's going on over here. Some points I need to inform you or present to you before we actually start with the first surah, Surah Al-Fatiha. And these are the points. Point number one, basically I would not even read the Arabic text. I would just be reading the English translation. And obviously the Arabic text, those of you are in the habit of reading, you can definitely do that. You should definitely do that. I mean, that's highly recommended. It's a highly recommended sunnah. It's a highly recommended practice. But then along with it, if you're in the habit of reading the English translation or any translation in which you understand the Quran best, then please do so. But if you're not in the habit of reading any translation alongside the Arabic, then I would suggest that this series would be of immense benefit to you, because we would not be just reading, which we would surely be doing, but also we would pause in between now and then for a rapid and brief, for a rapid and a brief explanation. The scope of the series does not allow us to go very deep into the text and the translation and the exegesis and the commentary, the tafsir basically, and the ta'wil basically. For that, we would have to frame a separate series which is not determined as a scope for this particular series. So that's basically it. And for the English translation that I'd be reading, I'd be using the Yusuf Ali translation. And I don't want to go into some controversies now. Yes, there are mistakes in the Yusuf Ali translation, but it's overall a pretty good translation. Uh, any translation for that matter, uh, the good ones, they will contain some mistakes here and there. Even I have pointed out some mistakes in the Yusuf Ali translation, but this is the translation that I have been using for a long time. The basic framework, obviously, for things which we need to have more explanation, I would try to do so, though it will be difficult to fit in everything in this very rapid exercise. So this is sort of an exercise that we are going through in this month, or we intend to carry on in this month. And so that's the end of the chapter about the translation. So please don't come and tell me that the Yusuf Ali translation contains mistakes. Yes, I know about that. I have in the past spoken about some of the mistakes. When we do come across those verses, I would be translating and indicating it to you as well, and I'd be translating the verses to the best of my ability from from the Arabic directly. So that's how I would try to help you out over those issues. And secondly, any translation, if you were to use another translation, it would invariably contain mistakes. So there is no translation which is perfect. And overall, this Yusuf Ali translation is a good translation according to my understanding. So that's why we intend to use this as our standard translation. So as I said, normally when you hear my lectures and speeches, the translation of the verses, the Arabic verses that I use is my own translation, translated directly from the Arabic. But 6,000 verses is a huge task, and it's difficult for a rapid exercise as this one. Now, let us try to, before we actually begin, let us try to look at the overall structuring of the Quran. So this will help us along the way. So what's the overall structure of the Quran like? It is sometimes said uh, on a lighter note, though sometimes it takes some great proportions, that the life of a Muslim is filled with conflicts. From the moment from the moment he is born till he dies, there is conflict surrounding each and every issue. And it may be true. It may be true to an extent that when a baby is born, the controversies of what to do with the baby starts then and there. Whether the azan should be pronounced or the azan and ikama should be pronounced. The conflicts begin. Right up to the salatul janaza, when the person passes away. Even after that, it doesn't seem to stop. And then whether the salatul janaza has one salam or two salams. So it's sometimes referred to lightly, in a light manner, in a light note, but it does have sometimes grave and serious consequences and connotations as well. Similarly, with the Quran, right from Surah Al Fatiha to Surah Al Nas, there seems to be uh, differences of opinion. We do not have this, I mean, it's beyond the scope of this series. We can and we should, we can explore it at other places at other times, but in a 1 month period it's very difficult to do so. So whether Surah Al-Fatiha it begins, I mean, it's unanimously agreed upon. We will discuss these when we come to Surah Al-Fatiha as well. It is unanimously agreed upon that it consists of 7 verses, but should Bismillah Rahman Rahim, should that be counted as a verse in this surah for this particular surah or not? Or should it start with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen? So the controversy starts there and it ends with the last two surahs of the Quran, whether the last two surahs, chapter number 113 and 114, is a part of the Quran or not. So, I mean, some of these are not really, I mean, the differences of opinion do not run that deep, but there are differences of opinion. Obviously, we know that there are 114 chapters of the Quran, and this is an aberration, an error in judgment of one particular companion of the Prophet ﷺ, that he thought that the last two chapters, Surah Falak and Surah Nas, are really certain du'as, supplications, invocations, and not really part of the Quran. So basically, I mean, what I wanted to point out is there are differences of opinion. So there are differences of opinion, and I would try to do my best, to the best of my ability, to explain to you the correct viewpoint regarding some of the issues, some of the more important issues. But for each and every issue, we would probably have to look at it in a different series. It's beyond the scope of this series. to cover each and every aspect. So that's the one thing we wanted to convey to you. Another important thing, perhaps the most important thing of this introductory session, is the structuring of the Quran. Now, I need to mention to you at the onset that the structuring of the Quran, the way it is presented to us, it is with us basically in the Quran Musaf that we have today, from Surah Fatiha, chapter number 1 to Surah Nas, chapter number 114, is essentially the same, and it has always been present in this way with the Muslim Ummah right from the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The order of revelation, however, is different, and the Prophet himself structured the Quran in this way. So this is a confusion sometimes brought forth by non-Muslims usually, but also in some cases by some Muslims, though they really should not bring up this issue. They have every right to make an effort to find out the actual order of revelation. That's fine, that's all right. But if they're not able to do so, then there's no harm, because the structuring and this ordering has also been established by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. So that's something I wanted to make a note of. Another point is how the Quran is divided, because the Quran is a voluminous book. It's a voluminous revelation, and so there are 6,000 plus verses. So how is it structured? So the basic structure that the Quran follows, the book the Quran follows, is mainly two divisions. One, that of chapters or surahs. One is called a surah, and the plural of surah in Arabic is suwar. We can also call it surahs for our convenience. And just as we say hadith and hadiths, though the plural for hadith is not hadiths but ahadith. So in any case, so that's the basic unit of the Quran, is a surah, and there are 114 surahs, chapters in the Quran, and each surah consists of a certain number of ayahs. So ayah is a verse, what is normally translated as verse in the English language. So ranging from as small as low as 3 verses that make up one surah to as many as 286 verses that make up one surah. So each chapter itself is divided in verses. So these are basically the two units that we are interested in. As far as the other divisions are concerned, then it's not really very logical. For example, dividing each chapter into sections, which is called ruku, and then each ruku will have certain number of verses. And for some of the smaller chapters, it will only have one ruku, one section. And it's not really required. It has been done for our ease of recitation, for a logical division. It's somewhat logical as well. It's not totally arbitrary, but then this has not been done by the Prophet ﷺ himself. This was later done, and the people who tried to do it has tried their best to divide each chapter into logical segments called sections or rukus. Each section is called a ruku. The other division that is of importance for us, actually that is not of any importance to us, is what is referred to as a juz. So the Quran, we know, consists of 30 juz or 30 parts, and this has been done so that we can complete one recitation of the Quran in a month, because a month consists of 30 days, sometimes 29 days as well, but 30 days. So the Quran has been divided into 30 juz. This division is absolutely arbitrary. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense at all. It seems that there was the entire Quran, and it was not randomly, it was just a number of pages was selected, and it was classed as, basically it was divided into 30 equal parts, and each part was called a juz. And in the process, what has happened is that a particular juz, some of the juz at least, they have dissected some of the surahs. So part of the surah, which is a very logical unit of the Quran. So a surah is a very logical unit of the Quran. It's a chapter of the Quran. Is in one juz, and the other part is in the other juz. It absolutely makes no sense. The division of the Quran into juz is absolutely arbitrary, and it absolutely defies any logic, absolutely defies any rational point of view. So that's something what we wanted to highlight as well. Besides this, there is one more division of the Quran which is called manzil. Now, manzil, now if you have the habit of reciting the Quran in 30 days in a month, then the division you can follow is the juz that I talked about, though it is not very logical, but you can still follow it. But if you want to complete the recitation of the Quran in 1 week, what do you do in that case? So, from the earliest times, uh, from the time of the companions, at least from the time of the companions themselves, they had divided, or maybe from the time of the Prophet ﷺ himself, the Quran was divided into 7 parts. So 7 days in a week, so it was divided into 7 parts. So each part can be recited in a day, and the Quran would be completed in 1 week. And in the next week, the Quran could be completed again. So this is called manzil or manzil, 7 manzils of the Quran. Now, how is it divided? How is it divided? So there are 114 surahs in the Quran, and uh, if we if we keep aside Surah Al-Fatiha for a while, then the first manzil will consist of 3 chapters, 3 surahs. The second manzil has 5 surahs. The third manzil has 7 surahs. The fourth manzil has 9 surahs. The fifth manzil has 11 surahs. The sixth manzil has 13 surahs. And the seventh manzil has 65 surahs. So that is how the division is done. And these are more or less, they are equal in their length, in the length of their recitation. So it's easy to remember us as well. So Surah Fatiha, you keep it aside. In any case, Surah Fatiha has to be recited in every rakah. And besides Surah Fatiha, in addition, you have to recite one more surah. So we can remember it very easily as well. The first manzil, it consists of 3, and the next is 5 odd numbers. The next is 7, the next is 9, the next is 11, the next is 13, and the next is also an odd number, but it's a multiple of 13, so 65. So that the sum total is 114. There is one last division of the Quran, and this is called a group. This is called a group. Now, there are 7 groups of surahs in the Quran. This is a division made by some scholars, and each group, what they have essentially done is they have included some Makki and some Madani surahs. Makki surahs are those which are revealed while the Prophet ﷺ was at Makkah, and Madani surahs are those which was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ when he was at Medina. So each group 1 will have Makki and Madani surahs. Group 2 will again have Makki and Madani surahs. Similarly for group 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So each of the 7 groups will have some Makki and some Madani surahs. So this is called a group. So there are 7 groups in the Quran. So this is basically the overall structuring that we need to know, and what we have presented for your benefit. And we'll start immediately with Surah Al-Fatiha. But before that, was just one last point. What we intend to do is, though we will have some 29 or 30 sessions, we will break it up. And so whenever we complete a chapter, we we make a separate part of a session, separate session for each of the chapters. So that's very easy for all of us to follow. And if someone were to wish to watch that chapter alone, that surah alone, he would have the opportunity to do so. So without wasting any further time, just one last point, and then we get started. So this is basically an exercise, a habit which I have of reading the entire Quran in Ramadan as well as in other months. I thought of organizing it and putting a little bit more effort on my part so that it's helpful to you as well. And when I've done so, you need to remember a few things. What are the few things that many of the things that I'll be reading, I would have a sufficiently good understanding of because I have read it several times and I have also had relevant research on the same. But everything I will not have the time to explain to you in this series, at least. At other times, we may have to do a separate series to do that. So in this series, we will not have the scope always to explain everything in details. So some of the points which I think is important and which needs to be brought forth in out for discussion, I'll try to do so. So that's basically it. Not everything, and some of the things, uh, as I said, some of the things I'll have some background to it. It may not be very clear to you, but I'll try to explain the important points at least. So that's how we intend to carry forward this series. So that's enough for the introductory session. We'll start straight with Surah Al-Fatiha and then Surah Al-Baqarah. That's our target for today. Let's see how much we are able to cover, and then we intend to proceed, inshallah, from tomorrow onwards from Surah Imran and then right up to Surah Nas. So that's the plan basically. So that's it for now. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.